The stadium was loud enough to vibrate in my ribs, but the row marked reserved for family stayed painfully still. When the announcer called my name, Beatrix Margot Harlow, I didn't look toward the crowd. I already knew no one would be there. I walked across the stage, shook the dean's hand, and lifted my diploma just high enough so the photographer could catch it. I tried to keep my smile steady. It wavered anyway. Fiona Lark found me in the chaos afterward. She was waving at her parents, who were juggling a bouquet and a phone. "B, you did it." She pulled me into a hug before I could dodge it. Then her eyes scanned behind me. "Where's your family parking trouble?" I kept my voice light. Something came up. She hesitated, the way people do when they sense a bruise. Her parents stepped in, offered to take our photo, and I stood between them like someone borrowing warmth that didn't belong to her. When Fiona ran off to celebrate, I let the crowd swallow her. I stayed behind, pretending to search for a ride share, pretending not to watch families wrap their arms around their graduates. That evening, when I stepped into my quiet Minneapolis apartment, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. Send $7,450 for Vivian's Sweet 16. Need it before Thursday. No greeting, no question. No mention of the ceremony she skipped. I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. Then I typed back one sentence, added $10, and hit send. Happy birthday. The silence that followed felt heavier than any lecture hall I had ever sat in. I opened the drawer near the door, pulled out the spare key my mother insisted on keeping for emergencies, and dropped it into the trash. A small sound, but it thudded through me. The locksmith came an hour later, an older man with kind eyes and a tool belt that jingled when he walked. We barely spoke while he worked. When the new lock clicked into place, he nodded as if he understood more than I had said. After he left, I stood in the doorway for a long moment. My hands were shaking, but for the first time all day, something inside me settled. I brewed coffee, even though it was late, and stood by the window watching the streetlights blink across the neighborhood. No one could walk in. No one could demand anything. The quiet felt like a beginning I had been avoiding for years. If you've ever held your breath while waiting for someone to choose you, I hope you stay with me. There might be something familiar here. I grew up in Maple Grove, where every lawn looked trimmed by the same careful hand, and every family pretended they were already living the life they wanted others to envy. In the Harlow house, appearances mattered more than breath. My sister Vivian learned that early. She sparkled in every room, the kind of child strangers called a star. My mother, Margot, loved that word. She shaped Vivian's world around it: ballet lessons, designer dresses, weekend showcases that cost more than our monthly groceries. When I was 15, I picked up my first job at a corner cafe. I still remember handing over my first paycheck, proud and nervous. Margot barely looked at it before saying, "Vivian needs new recital shoes. You can help, can't you?" I nodded. I always nodded. Vivian would run up to me after her classes, twirling in whatever glittered. "Look, B-Mom says this one makes me look like a real dancer." She meant well. It was never her fault she became the center of gravity in our home. The older I got, the more Margot relied on what she called my steady nature. If money was tight, she came to me. If Vivian needed something special, she came to me. If she wanted a problem solved without dirtying her hands, she came to me. Once, during my sophomore year of college, I asked her why she missed my scholarship dinner. She was filing her nails and barely glanced up. "Your sister had a rehearsal. You understand. You have always been the reliable one. Reliable, steady, invisible." I learned not to ask again. When I told her I had been accepted into a master's program, she sent a 3-sentence reply. The last line read, "Do not forget, Vivian's graduation is coming. She deserves something memorable." I carried that message into every late-night study session, every shift I worked to stay afloat. I believed that if I achieved enough, She would finally see me as more than convenience. Standing in my apartment now, replaying the locksmith's last nod, I realized the truth had been following me for years. I had just stopped long enough to feel it. The morning after graduation settled over my apartment like a held breath. I woke before my alarm, the new lock gleaming faintly on the door, as if it were waiting to see what I would do next. For the first time in years, I didn't check my phone. I made coffee instead. Halfway through my first sip, someone knocked. Not a neighbor's soft tap, a firm, deliberate rhythm. I froze, cup in hand. Another knock followed, sharper. I stepped toward the door and looked through the peephole. 2 police officers stood in the hallway, shoulders squared, badges catching the hallway light. I opened the door only a few inches. "Can I help you?" The taller officer, a man with a calm expression and dark eyes, spoke first. "Miss Harlow, I am Officer Harlan Pierce. This is Officer Ruiz. We received a call requesting a welfare check." My stomach tightened. "From who?" He didn't hesitate. "Your mother." Of course, she had not even waited a full day. Officer Pierce continued, his tone gentle. "She reported receiving a message that suggested you might be in distress." I blinked hard. "I never sent her anything." He nodded slowly, as if he expected that answer. "May we step inside?" "We only need to confirm you are safe." I opened the door wider. They entered, eyes scanning the room without judgment, my laptop open on the table, the coffee mug, my graduation gown still draped over a chair. Officer Ruiz spoke softly. "Your place looks orderly. You seem stable. Are you experiencing any thoughts of harming yourself?" "No," I said. "What I am experiencing is a mother who panics when she loses control." Officer Pierce's eyes softened just slightly. "It happens more often than people think." That was the closest anyone had come to understanding me in a long time. After a few more questions, my job applications, my health, my plans. The officers stepped back into the hallway. "If your mother calls again," Officer Pierce said, "reference this visit. You are documented as safe." "Thank you," I whispered. When the door clicked shut, the apartment fell quiet again. Not the fragile kind of quiet that shatters with one message from Margot. A different quiet, one that reminded me I had finally locked something out, and for once, it stayed out. The email about the welfare check sat in my inbox like a bruise. Visit completed. Subject appeared stable. No further action required. My mother had tried to turn me into a story for the police, and it had failed. That should have made me feel safer than it did. Instead, it made me open my laptop. I logged into my banking app first, then into the credit monitoring site I barely touched unless a landlord asked for proof. A small red banner blinked at the top of the screen. 2 new hard inquiries in the last 30 days. My throat tightened. I clicked. Crescent First Bank Maple Grove Branch. Northern Premier Credit Union Maple Grove. I had not applied for anything with either of them. I clicked again, this time into the detailed report. 2 new revolving accounts glowed at me, both tagged with my name and social security number. The listed address was not my apartment in Minneapolis. It was my parents' house in Maple Grove. A cold, precise kind of anger started in my chest. I followed the link to recent transactions. Deposit to Skyview Hall. Balance due noted. Payment to Aurora DJ Collective. Retainer for Lux Glam Studios. Partial charge from North Star Catering with a note, Vivian Harlow event. My mother's text replayed in my mind. Word for word. Send $7,450 for Vivian's Sweet 16. She had not asked. She had never planned to ask. I grabbed my phone and dialed the customer service number for Crescent First Bank. A recorded voice walked me through menus until a human finally picked up. "Thank you for calling Crescent First. This is Janine. How can I assist you today?" "My name is Beatrix Harlow," I said. "There is a new credit card account under my name that I did not open." "All right. Miss Harlow, let us verify your identity together." Her tone shifted into professional rhythm. Name, birthday, social security number, the last address on file. When she read it out, I interrupted. That is my parents' address. I said, I have not lived there for years. There was a small pause. Then the faint clicking of keys. I see the account you are referring to. It was opened at our Maple Grove branch. I live in Minneapolis. I said, I did not open it. I did not authorize anyone to open it. Another pause. Longer this time. There is a joint applicant listed, she said carefully. A co-signer. The name on file is Margot Harlow. For a second, the room went silent around me. Even the hum of the refrigerator faded. That is my mother. I said, I understand, Janine replied. Her voice shifted, softer but more guarded. Family cases can be complicated. She may have believed she was helping you establish credit. She used my information without my consent. I said, that is called identity theft. I am not disputing your feelings, she said, as if she were reading off a script. What I can do is start a fraud investigation. It will involve some paperwork. You will need to complete an affidavit. The bank will review signatures, application footage if available, and we may contact both parties. Both parties. I repeated. Yes. In situations where a parent is involved, it is not uncommon for there to be differing understandings of permission. I let out a short, humorless laugh. I did not give verbal permission. I did not give written permission. I did not give implied permission. She signed my name at your branch. I hear you, Janine said. I am not saying you are at fault. I am saying the process may take time, and I want you to be prepared. Would you like me to email you the fraud packet today? I closed my eyes. Even here, even with my name on a fraudulent contract, my mother's narrative still had room to breathe. Yes. I said, send it. After we ended the call, I stayed at the table staring at the glowing list of charges. Skyview Hall, Aurora DJ, Lux Glam, my sister's perfect evening, built on my stolen name. On the edge of my screen, another tab blinked an article I had once bookmarked about privacy laws in Minnesota, back when I thought I might minor in pre-law. I opened it now, scanning lines I barely remembered reading. One phrase caught and held my attention. Minnesota is a one-party consent state. Only one person in a conversation must be aware of and agree to the recording for it to be lawful. The anger inside me shifted, sharpening into something else. My mother loved the sound of her own justifications. She trusted them. She believed them. If she wanted to talk about what I owed, I would let her. And this time, I would not be the only one listening. I stared at my phone for a long time before I dialed. My fingers hovered over the screen, not from hesitation, but from the strange calm that had settled over me since reading the words one-party consent. This time, my mother would not rewrite the story. I pressed call. It rang 3 times. Margot answered with a voice already sharpened. So, you finally remembered how to use a phone? I hit the record button. I need to ask you about 2 credit accounts opened in my name. A small exhale, almost a laugh. Oh, that. You are welcome. You have never understood how the real world works. Beatrix. Credit matters. You forged my signature. I said. I represented your interests. She replied. There is a difference. My name was used without permission. You owe this family more than you admit, she snapped. Vivian deserves a proper celebration. She is turning 16 once. Her night cannot be ruined because you want to be dramatic. So, you opened an account using my information. I handled paperwork the way any mother would. If you truly cared about this family, you would not be making such a fuss. I kept my voice steady. The balance is over $11,590. That is not your concern, she said. What matters is the outcome. Vivian will have her moment. She has earned it with her performances. And who earned the money that is supposed to pay for this moment? You are being petty. This is why you will never understand family obligation. I understand it perfectly, I said. You expect obedience. You expect silence. You expect access to whatever I build. Margot inhaled sharply. Do not talk to me like you have been mistreated. You have always benefited from this family. By working 2 jobs since 15, by paying for recitals and dresses while you called it pride, by putting myself through graduate school alone. You did that for yourself, she said. Do not pretend it was sacrifice. It was survival. I replied. For a moment, there was only her breathing. Then her tone changed, smoother, colder. All you have ever needed to do is stay steady. That is your role. Vivian shines. You support. That is how a family stays balanced. I am not your foundation, I said, and I am not your credit line. A beat of silence. Then Margot's voice dropped into something harsher than anger. What is yours is ours. That is how this family works. I tapped the screen to save the recording. Her words landed exactly where I needed them to be clear, deliberate, documented. Thank you for explaining, I said. You should be grateful. She snapped. I am, I said, more than you know. Before she could respond, I ended the call. The recording icon flickered off, leaving my apartment quiet again. I replayed the last line in my head, not her insult, not her control, but the part she never meant to give me. What is yours is ours. She believed it. She said it proudly. And for the first time, I had proof of exactly who she was, captured in her own voice. I set my phone down, my pulse steady. The next step would not be a conversation. It would be a confrontation. Bellevue Diner sat halfway between Minneapolis and Maple Grove, the closest thing to neutral ground I could find. I chose it because it was public enough that no one could raise their voice without drawing stares. Margot hated being seen in anything less than control. They arrived 12 minutes late. Margot entered first, dressed as if she were attending a charity brunch instead of a confrontation. Edward followed a step behind her, carrying the posture of a man who avoided choosing sides by pretending not to see them. Vivian trailed after both of them, tapping something on her phone, her thumbs moving fast. Margot slid into the booth across from me without waiting for an invitation. You made this unnecessarily difficult, Beatrix. We do not have long, so speak. Vivian sat beside her mother, eyes still on the screen. Edward took the far edge of the booth, shoulders tense. I placed a brown folder on the table. I am here because 2 credit accounts were opened under my name. Both list your address. Both show charges for Vivian's Suite 16. Margot waved a hand. We already discussed this. You worry too much. I did what any mother would. You forged my signature. I said? Edward flinched. Barely. Vivian finally looked up. Margot's voice sharpened. I handled a form. Do not twist things. I opened the folder and turned it toward her. This is the application from Crescent First Bank. The handwriting does not match mine. This is the authorization for Northern Premier. The signature is yours. The investigator will confirm that. Vivian's eyes darted between the papers. Mom, you told me this was handled. It was handled. Margot snapped. Your sister is trying to turn this into a spectacle because she cannot stand that it is your moment. This is not about Vivian. I said, this is about my identity being used without consent. Margot leaned forward, her tone turning icy. You owe this family. I will not apologize for reminding you. I have the recorded call. I said. Her expression faltered for the first time. Edward sat up straighter. Vivian's mouth parted in confusion. You recorded me, Margot asked, voice cutting thin. In Minnesota, one person must consent. I said. I consented. And in that call, you admitted everything. Vivian whispered. Mom. Margot kept her gaze locked on me. You would ruin your sister's celebration over a misunderstanding. You tried to frame me as unstable, I said. You opened debt in my name. You crossed every line. Edward spoke then, quietly. Let us handle this privately. No need to escalate. It is all ready with Crescent First Bank. I told him, they have the documents. They have the recording. The investigation has started. Margot's composure cracked. A hairline fracture across a perfectly polished surface. You will regret this. Beatrix. I closed the folder. No, I regret waiting this long. I stood, placed cash for my coffee on the table, and stepped out of the booth. Vivian's voice followed me, shaky and small. B. What is going to happen? I did not answer. The truth was already in motion. Skyview Hall always tried too hard, even from the parking lot. I could hear the bass thudding through the walls, the kind of heavy beat that made teenagers feel like the night was bigger than them. I stayed in my car with the engine off and the phone in my lap. I was not there to watch anything unfold. I only needed to know when it started. At 8:42, my phone lit up, a number I did not recognize. I answered quietly. Miss Harlow. A firm female voice said, This is Investigator Laura Kemp with Crescent First Bank. Our team is on site at the venue. Law enforcement is present for verification. I nodded, even though she could not see it. Thank you for letting me know. You are not required to come inside, she added. We will document the charges and gather the necessary statements. Good, I said. I will stay where I am. I hung up and stared through the windshield. Guests streamed toward the entrance, glittering dresses and black suits under the parking lot lights. A moment later, 2 officers and a woman in a navy blazer stepped inside. The music did not cut immediately. It dimmed like the room held its breath. My phone buzzed again, this time a string of messages from Vivian. B. Something is happening. Police just walked in. Mom is freaked out. Another message arrived seconds later. They said your name. Why would they say your name inside the hall? The DJ's voice faltered, then faded entirely. A murmur rose from dozens of guests. The investigator's voice carried through the speakers, calm, practiced, unshakable. There is an active fraud investigation concerning charges made under the name Beatrix Harlow. We are here to verify transactions connected to this event. For a moment, no one moved. Then someone whispered loud enough to carry, Isn't that her sister? The crowd shifted, a ripple of curiosity turning into unease. Vivian's next text came through fast. Mom is saying it is a mistake. The officer is reading something. People are filming. I could almost see it. Margot standing by the cake table, the ice sculpture spelling Vivienne melting under the heat of stage lights. Her perfect posture slipping as the investigator read from the file, primary applicant Margot Harlow, co-signer unauthorized. The words would have landed like a public sentence. My phone rang. Vivian again, this time calling. I let it go to voicemail. A second later, a text arrived. Everyone is looking at her. B. What did she do? I closed my eyes. I could hear the hall unraveling, the DJ unplugging his equipment, the chatter rising, the glittering facade collapsing piece by piece. Through the glass doors, I saw people beginning to spill outside, their faces tight with shock, sympathy, or something uglier, curiosity sharpened into gossip. I started my car, but did not drive. I sat there long enough to see Margot emerge into the night, shoulders rigid, Vivian beside her in a gown that suddenly looked too bright for the moment. Margot kept her chin lifted, but her hands trembled at her sides. I did not step out. I did not call her name. I did not give her the audience she always demanded. I simply watched the night swallow her certainty. 2 mornings after the collapse at Skyview Hall, an email from Crescent First Bank arrived. The subject line read, Fraud Investigation Resolution. My hands tightened around my mug as I opened it. The primary applicant has accepted full financial responsibility for all charges. No further action required from the secondary party. They never named her. They did not need to. Margot had signed whatever she needed to sign. A moment later, my phone buzzed Fiona. She did not usually call this early. "B," she said, breathless. "Is any of this online people are talking about some Sweet 16 disaster in Maple Grove?" "It is real," I said. "Everything you heard is probably the sanitized version." She hesitated. "Your name came up. Are you all right?" "I am fine," I said. "Better than fine." After we hung up, more notifications rolled in screenshots, messages, links. A 30-second video from the party had already been shared thousands of times. Someone had caught the moment the investigator read my name aloud. Another clip showed Margot arguing with an officer in a corner while guests stared. Maple Grove moved quickly when it sensed a fracture. By evening, Vivian sent a single text. "I did not know. I am sorry." I read it twice and set the phone face down. Later, a colleague from my graduate program messaged me. "Your dad works at Willer and Stone." "Right. Someone said he got pulled into HR for letting personal mail show up at the office." I closed my laptop gently. The consequences were spreading. Quiet, but unavoidable. For once, none of them belonged to me. I spent the next day on the phone with agencies I had avoided for years. I filed the identity theft report with the Federal Trade Commission, froze my credit with all 3 bureaus, and closed every lingering account that had ever listed the Maple Grove address. Each confirmation email felt like a thread snapping loose. When I finished, my apartment felt strangely quiet, as if it were waiting for me to acknowledge something. I opened the drawer where I kept important papers and pulled out 3 things: my diploma, the fraud resolution letter, and the old lock the locksmith had removed. I set them on the table, side by side. The lock was heavier than I remembered. The metal clinked softly when I placed it down, and the sound echoed through me more than the police knock ever had. My phone buzzed a call from my father. I let it ring until it stopped. A second call followed, then a third. He did not leave a voicemail. I picked up the old lock again and turned it in my hand. For years, every door in my life felt like it opened only for others. This one had finally closed the way I chose. I hung the 3 items on my wall, earned, protected, reclaimed. 6 months later, the world felt different around me, quieter in a way that finally made sense. I had started my new position at Northbeam Analytics, and most mornings began with coworkers greeting me like I belonged there. No one asked for anything. No one demanded a piece of me I did not offer. One evening, as I unlocked my apartment door, the air carried that early fall sharpness Minnesota is known for. I hung my bag, glanced at the wall where my diploma, the fraud letter, and the old lock rested in a neat row, and felt something settle in my chest, steady, grounded. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Vivian. "I hope you are doing better. I am trying to understand everything. Maybe someday we can talk." I read it twice. I did not feel anger, only a calm acceptance. Some things did not need to be resolved to be over. A moment later, a message popped up from Fiona. "We are grabbing dinner Friday. You should come. You sound lighter these days." I found myself smiling. "I might." I typed back. I stepped onto my balcony and let the cool breeze sweep around me. Cars hummed below. Students laughed somewhere in the distance. And for once, the silence inside me did not feel like something missing. It felt like something earned. If you have ever had to fight for the right to breathe in your own life, I hope you hear something familiar in mine. And if you are out there carving out your first boundary or your 50th, tell me where you are listening from. I like knowing how many of us finally changed the locks.